All right, welcome back, Illumineers, to another deck profile. My name is Sugi, and we are a part of the LorcanaCast and Lorcana HQ Discord, and we're going to be talking about the Budget Stitch Rookie Rush. This is a Stitch Turbo aggro, very aggressive questing deck, and this is absolutely something you should be able to build out of a booster box and a few trades. And it's a lot of fun, and we're going to break down what's in the deck and how it works. So the first thing we want to take a look at here is Stitch Rockstar. His ability, Adoring Fans, is whenever you play a character with cost 2 or less, you may exert them to draw a card. So the idea behind Stitch Turbo is you want to shift him up on turn 4 on top of this baby Stitch, which is the new dog right here, the 1-drop. And then you just fill your deck with a bunch of 1 and 2-drop super effective characters, and you exert them, you draw a card, you play another one, you exert that second one, you draw a card, you play the third one, so on and so forth. So the idea is you want to flood the board with a bunch of lore batteries or efficient cards that give you some kind of special effect. And then if your opponent doesn't have grab your swords or some way to do mass removal, you ready everybody up on the next turn, quest out, and you quest for like 10, 12, 14 lore in a single turn, and the opponent just cannot catch up to you. So let's take a look at the cards here in the deck. We have got 4 copies of Captain Hook, Forceful Duelist. The one of the weaknesses of this deck in particular, let's go back here, is if you look at the lineup, you're going to see character, song, a little bit of draw, but mostly you're just kind of flooding your deck with characters. And you don't have necessarily great removal. You don't necessarily have great draw. Your trade-off in this deck is you're going for this really aggressive Turbo Stitch play so that you land this card as frequently as possible on turn 4. And then you just blow out your opponent with all of these little small bodies ASAP. So you're going to need some backup strategies, some contingency plans in order to deal with things that are a little bit bigger than you or keep your opponent off kilter early game. So that's why we have Captain Hook. He's a 1/2 with a challenger +2. So while he challenges into other things, he gains +2 attack. So he's going to be a 3/2 very, very potent small body. So he can basically take out anything from turns 1 to 3 generally. So this Captain Hook is more or less a removal piece built into a body. So if you can get him out early game, you threaten your opponent and force them to think, do I want to challenge this Captain Hook? Do I want to quest and get challenged? What do I want to do? And maybe you can slow them down and force them to not do anything for a turn or two, which helps you because as long as your opponent isn't questing, that's giving you more time to set up your combo, to set up your giant board, and to win the game. Next up, we have Fire the Cannons. This is just a standard 2 damage action card. You can use this to take out things that Captain Hook can't. So that would be like Pascal. You can extend his range. So if he swings for 3, you can then add on an extra 2 damage. So you can take out characters with 5 willpower. So Fire the Cannons is just a great way to keep your opponent off tempo early game on turns 1 and 2, and then use Captain Hook to finish the job on turns 3 and 4, so on and so forth. Hei Hei, he's just here to be a part of the Stitch Turbo combo. You can use the support to flood out something maybe on like Captain Hook or Prince Eric to make their challenger bigger, but realistically, he's a target for Stitch's ability to just keep playing cards, keep exerting them, keep drawing more cards, and so on and so forth. Lilo is a just super good lore battery. She costs 1 ink. She's got 1/1 stat line, not good, but she quests for 2 lore. I mean, like, you can't ask for more than that. If you can get 1 of her out or 2 of her out early game and your opponent isn't running something aggressive, you can start questing and forcing them to challenge into her, which means you're gaining lore. They're not because they're challenging into her, so you're getting lore denial at the same time. It's just a great combo piece. Also, she goes really well into the Stitch Adoring Fans ability. If you draw her, you can play her, exert her, draw another card, and then maybe get another Lilo. Oh my gosh, that's great. You play the second Lilo, exert it, draw another card, keep flooding the board, keep putting more pressure on the opponent, keep putting out more threats. And yeah, you can use this really offensively or defensively, depending on the state of the game. And she's just a really, really useful tool. All right, Simba Future King. This one I put in here because of the ability. So when you play this character, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. So like I said earlier, this deck doesn't have great draw, like pure draw power, like say Amethyst. Now I've thought about putting in a whole new world. That may come in a future rendition of this deck, but we were specifically focused on trying to build a budget aggro list because New World is another super rare that is extremely popular. And although we don't necessarily have price points, I have seen people trying to sell a whole New World in the range of $20 to $30. I don't think it's worth $20 to $30 personally, but the game is new, the hype is new. There's still a lot of FOMO and worry about the ability to get product from friendly local game stores. But then once we get the September 1st release and Lorcana is in big box stores across the world, I'm pretty sure that price point is going to drop pretty significantly. But the idea for this deck was to craft something that's very accessible, very powerful, and it shouldn't cost you more than, maybe $50 to $80, depending on how much the stitches are going for. And you can subsidize maybe getting 3 Stitch Rockstars instead of 4. Again, the idea is we're trying to build a budget deck that's very accessible. So Simba Future King does a couple things. When you play this character, you may draw a card and then choose and discard a card. So early game, you want to mulligan really hard for Stitch Rockstar, and then you also want to mulligan really hard for Stitch New Dog, the 1-drop. If you can't get both pieces, so say you mulligan hard and you get the Stitch Rockstar, but you're missing the Stitch New Dog. Okay, you can get to turn 6. We'll make it. We'll get there. But Simba can help accelerate your hand, and if you don't have you can use it to, draw a card. If it's not the piece you need, then you just discard the worst card in your hand. So this is a filter tool that allows you to continually filter and dig for the things you need and get rid of the things you don't need. It's another great card to use with the Stitch Rockstar because his ability only works on characters that cost 1 or 2. So if you play this Simba, you can use its effect to draw a card, discard a card. Then you can use the Stitch Rockstar effect to exert the Simba and draw a card. So you're able to, again, dig, filter, and basically control a little bit more of what's coming into your hand versus top decking, drawing the top card of your deck, and praying that it is what you want or it works with the Stitch Rockstar ability. So Simba is great both with or without Stitch Rockstar on the board. It's a great body. It's got 1 pip of lore. I mean, you can't really ask for more out of a 1-drop, honestly. Moving on, this is the Stitch Rockstar shift target. So there's not too much to say. You want to try and mulligan one of these in your hand along with Stitch Rockstar, and then you want to protect the new dog. So when I say protect him, you want to play him on turn 3 and force your opponent to have an answer, and then you shift on turn 4. You really don't want to play him out on turn 2 or turn 1 even, because that gives your opponent a chance to respond on their turn 1, their turn 2, and their turn 3. So if your opponent has any kind of removal and they're paying attention to what you're inking, paying attention to what you're playing, they're probably going to realize pretty quickly you're running a Stitch Turbo deck, and they're going to try and dig really hard to get their cannons or their smash or their grab your sword. So you don't want to telegraph too early what you're doing, and you don't want Stitch on the board for more turns than necessary so that your opponent has multiple opportunities to do something and ruin your strategy. Okay, this Aladdin is interesting. I've kind of started to fall in love with him, mostly because of the 2 lore. His stats aren't anything to write home about, but the reality is he fills in that adoring fan's ability with being a character that costs 2 or less. You can play him on the board, you can exert him, you can draw a card, etc., etc. But if this character readies, he can quest for 2. That's really good. You want to keep as many 2 lore batteries on the board to pressure your opponent. And I think he's a great piece for that. Also, he fits into that budget constraint of being a 2 lore battery that's not a rare, super rare, legendary. He's just really flexible and he gets the job done. Next up is Be Our Guest. This is another piece that you're going to use to dig for the Stitch Rockstar combo. So if you have piece A, but not piece B, you can use Be Our Guest, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal a character card and put it into your hand, and then put the rest at the bottom of your deck. So use this card to dig for Stitch New Dog, the 1-drop, or Stitch Rockstar, the 6-drop. Again, this is a Stitch Turbo deck. You want to rush that Stitch as fast as you can, and this card helps build up your consistency. Also, you can use characters that cost 2 or more to sing the card for free. So, depending on your board state, depending on what your opponent has on the board, depending on if you need your ink and your inkwell, you can sing this for 0 ink and then potentially, shift onto a Stitch on turn 4. I mean, there's a lot of different combinations of things that can happen where you can hard cast this on turn 2 and then dig. Or maybe you've got, turn 4, you've got 4 ink available. You've got a Stitch New Dog on the board. You've got a 2-cost character ready to rock. So you sing with the 2-cost character, you find the Stitch Rockstar, you shift up on turn 4, and then you start all of your shenanigans. Like, there's not really a place where this card is bad unless you're at turn 8 and you haven't gotten a Stitch online. Then you might be in trouble. But early game, yeah, if you can't find the Stitch Rockstar or the New Dog, I would mulligan for this as well to kind of push to try and find one of those combo pieces between Be Our Guest, having 4 copies of Be Our Guest, 4 copies of Stitch, both Rockstar and New Dog. Pretty consistent that you see both combo pieces to get this shift off on turn 4. So keep an eye out for this card in your deck. There are 4 copies of Beast's Mirror. So your deck has 0 draw, like pure draw outside of this card. And there are 4 copies for this reason. When you get 1 on the board, you then have 3 copies you can ink. It's a really reliable card. You are going to burn out of cards really fast. This is a very, very aggressive deck, which means you're playing cards into your inkwell and you're playing cards onto the field pretty consistently. So Beast's Mirror allows you to continue that gas, continue the fuel and the flame, so you don't just peter out and you're stuck top decking the rest of the game. And at that point, you've probably lost, honestly. All right, LeFou, he's the inverse of the Aladdin. He's a 2-cost, 1/2, 2 lore battery. Like, that's it. He just taps for 2 or quests for 2, sorry. And there's really nothing else to talk about him. He's just another great target to get lore into your winning condition, your lore pool. And him, if you have LeFou, Lilo, and the Aladdin, you can put so much pressure on the opponent so quickly. And even early game, he's just a great body to drop on turn 2, and then you start questing with him, and the opponent has to answer you. They don't really want you questing for 4 lore on turn 3 if you have a Lilo and a LeFou, because that's kind of insane. And you're losing the game to some really, really low-to-the-ground bodies, which feels really bad. So, yeah, LeFou, very simple, very standard. Next up is Prince Eric. So this card is here for the exact same reason Captain Hook is here. You've got Challenger +2. He is a 3/3 when challenging into the opponent. He is a 1/3 when being challenged into on defense. But, again, this is another body that can trigger the Adoring Fans ability from Stitch. He can be a threat offensively. He can be a quester defensively. He just kind of is what you need him to be when you need him to be it. You can use Prince Eric and Captain Hook early game to threaten your opponent and keep their board fairly clear, which allows you to set up your Stitch again and not worry too much about your opponent getting out of control with their questing or building up their board. It's also a great answer to other aggro decks, because if they quest with their, Lilo, or they quest with their LeFou, you can swing Prince Eric or Captain Hook into those lore batteries. In the trade, you will win. They will lose the character. You will retain both Hook and Prince Eric. And then if your opponent decides to challenge into Eric or Hook, they're not questing. And that means although the Eric and Hook will probably be banished, your opponent isn't questing, gaining lore. So that gives you a body removal, lore denial, and slowing the tempo down of the game, which is great because, again, if you can set up that board and blow out your field with a bunch of low to the ground characters, you probably win if the opponent doesn't have Grab Your Sword. Next up is Simba, the Protective Cub. This is a really surprisingly powerful card in this deck. Having a bodyguard at the 2-drop slot at 2/3 is really, really, really good. And here's why. If you don't have the Stitch combo, you can use Simba to protect your Lilos early game. And he's kind of hard to get through on turns 2 and 3 unless they have Smash, Rafiki, something with Rush, even the Peter Pan in Ruby. There are only a few cards in certain colors that can deal with this Simba immediately. And if your opponent isn't running those colors or doesn't have those cards, that means your Lilo and your lore batteries are safe behind Simba for a couple turns, which means you get more lore. They can't get to your lore batteries. You get to extend your range. You get to extend the pace of the game, keep your tempo up. And your opponent just kind of has to deal with it by challenging, which means, again, lore denial because they're not questing, and that means their bodies are exerted. So if you have a counterplay with Captain Hook or Prince Eric, or you've got cannons or some kind of removal piece, it just kind of puts your opponent on the back foot. So Simba's great. He also is really, really useful coming out onto the field with the Adoring Fans ability. You want him to be exerted, so you get to pay 2 resources, exert him, and draw a card. That is just value on a bodyguard character. Like, this is just one of the best pieces to play into that Stitch Rockstar Adoring Fans combo. All right, next up, we're getting out of the range of the 2- and 1-drop characters, and we have Hercules, the true hero. Again, bodyguards are really, really, really obnoxious when you're hiding something small and powerful behind it. And again, this is just another way to keep your characters safe. This can help protect your Stitch Rockstar. This can help protect your Lilo. This can help protect your Aladdin and your LeFou, all of your lore batteries. This can also protect your challengers like Hook and Eric, because if your opponent cannot attack them with Hercules and or Simba protecting them, then you keep getting value out of that challenger ability where they ready up on a next turn, then they can challenge again and get their attack bonus. So this card is here to slow the tempo of the game down, annoy your opponent, force them to expend resources they may or may not have wanted to. This will eat a Rafiki. This will eat a cannons. This will force the opponent to look and go, I really wanted to play X, but now I have to play Y and I don't want to. So again, you want to use these cards that you have available to slow the tempo of the game down, slow the pace of the game down, disrupt opponent choices, disrupt opponent opportunities, protect your stuff, make your opponent extend themselves in ways they don't want to, and get you a chance to consistently hit that Stitch Rockstar and then either protect him with your bodyguards or protect the other things you have early game, so that way you can just keep that lore up over and over and over. Keep questing, get 2 lore, get 4 lore, get 6 lore, hide behind a Hercules, and, it's hard to catch up, really is. Smash, there's only 3 copies of the card, really because there's only a couple things you don't particularly want to deal with here in certain matchups. Honestly, some of your worst matchups are going to be against, say, evasives. because you really don't have an answer for that. So you need to use your removal. Smash can get through most things up through Pongo, so you can get rid of... you cannot get rid of Goofy, cannot get rid of Tigger. If they're running the 5-drop Tinkerbell, that's another problem. But most people are going to be running like your Pascals, your Peter Pans, your Pongos. This is just a great way to get those off the board and not really worry about it. Smash can also deal with... I can't think of any major targets here. I mean, if you're playing like a mirror match and you see a Stitch Rockstar, you're going to want to pop it with either cannons or Smash so they can't quest. You could also use Smash against, there's the Who's It Collector Ariel. She's got 3 willpower, I believe. You've also got the Elsa Shift. So most people are playing the 2/3 Elsa, so this can pop her, get her off the board before they shift into Spirit of Winter. There's a lot of things that this Smash can get rid of that would be a shift target. So use it wisely, but it's not necessarily a primary focus depending on the matchup. But you have the tool if needed. This is a fun tech card I specifically put in. This is Hades, Lord of the Underworld, 4 ink for a 3/2 body. Well of Souls ability states, when you play this character, return a character card from your discard pile to your hand. Something that's you're gonna see this happen a lot. This is the Stitch Rockstar. This is the big boy. This is your mainline character that you want on the board. So guess what? He is going to be a lightning rod for removal. So if the opponent has any way, any means, any tool to get this Stitch off the board, they're going to use it because this is the crux of the deck. If Stitch Rockstar isn't on board, you can win. It's not game over, but he kind of helps accelerate and solidify that win. So if he goes into the discard pile, you don't really have any ways to get him back into your hand. However, by adding in this Hades, Lord of the Underworld, you have what's called in trading card games recursion. That allows you to recur things over and over again. So if for some reason your Stitch Rockstar gets sent to the discard pile via challenging, he gets banished, maybe a removal piece gets him out of the field, maybe you get hit with a whole new world and he was in your hand, now he's in your discard pile. The idea behind Hades is he extends the life of the deck because he can turn himself into a way to get either Stitch Rockstar or Stitch New Dog back into your hand. There's maybe times when you want to get back like a Lilo just to put pressure on the opponent. You can use Hades to recur himself if you just need bodies to swing into people. There's a lot of interesting combos with Hades being able to just bring things back out of the discard pile. But the primary objective is Hades brings back Stitch Rockstar, which means Stitch Rockstar constantly is on the board, putting pressure on your opponent, exerting your characters that cost 2 or less, drawing cards, flooding the field, etc., etc. So this is definitely a tech card, in my opinion. You can slot him out for other things. You can bring his number down to maybe 2 of. This is a personal choice, but I would highly recommend thinking about some kind of recursion, because if you only have 4 copies of Stitch and no way to bring him back, you probably aren't going to win the game very frequently because there's so many ways to get him off the board. And that means if you don't have recursion, you have to physically draw him. And outside of using Be Our Guest, which is there here, like we put this in as a contingency plan. Be Our Guest lets you dig for the pieces you need, and then Hades lets you recur the pieces if for some reason they've been removed. So that's the nuts and bolts of this deck. You can see here again, it's a really, really fun list. Not too many cards in the high rarity that you have to pick up. There are 4 copies of the super rare Stitch Rockstar, 4 copies of Hades, Lord of the Underworld, who is a rare. And then I believe the only other rare we've got here is Lilo. And in your booster packs, you get 2 rares or better in each pack. And it shouldn't really be that hard to be able to get your hands on 8 rares and 4 supers. especially with the pull rates we've been seeing. It's pretty darn good. So thanks for watching. This has been a lot of fun. This is the Stitch Rookie Rush budget deck. Definitely let us know what you think, if you want to see more, what decks you want to see, and then make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notifications button, because we're going to be doing all kinds of really cool videos, just kind of breaking down all these decks, all these cards, and you can build decks in the official Lorcana companion app. Go pick it up on iOS or Android. It's totally free. It's out right now. You can like use it for all kinds of stuff here. There's news on the homepage. You can look at your decks. You can like go through every single card in the entire game. There's a lore counter. There's a learn to play video series here. I mean, it's everything you could possibly want inside of an app, and it's totally free. So go download it, and we will see everyone on our next deck profile video. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.